they have a pain boy who you think would heal the orcs. No, this Big Mac just puts one back together.
Auspex scan initiated. I'm picking up a podcast arriving. Wait. Designation. Forge the narrative.
Hey everybody, welcome to Forge the Narrative. My name is Paul, your host. I'm joined by Adam Camilleri.
Evening, everybody. Morning, afternoon, whatever it may be.
Time zones, how do they work? Red Powell and Tanya Gates.
Yo, what up?
Hey, everybody.
Welcome. This is the first official Season 2 episode. We're off vacation.
Are we?
We're officially back at work.
No, yeah, I'm totally off vacation.
Clocking in.
Yeah, I mean, of all of us, Red has easily been the laziest in our vacation time.
Oh, gosh, that hurts so much.
The sarcasm is thick, and it is there, ever present.
Still hurts.
Just had his feet up, doing nothing, going nowhere.
We have a lot to talk about. The largest brand new edition of Warhammer 40,000 tournament is happening the weekend that people will be hearing this episode. So far, anyway, in Tacoma, right outside of Seattle, Washington. That would be the U.S. Open series for Games Workshop. It's going to be a lot of players.
Yeah, it's going to be a really big deal. It's going to be the kind of test bed for a lot of different things to see, especially GW having put out essentially a little mini patch fix to a couple of things that were obviously a bit erroneous, case in point being the Wraith Knights for the Eldari. But, we'll see what impact they had there, whether more was needed, less was needed. Things are just perfect. It's GW's first big stress test on their mission formats as well. So it's and terrain formats. So it's going to be a lot of experimentation, a lot of discovery is going to be happening over the next kind of week or two.
There will be some live streaming happening from the event.
Oh, who's going to be shoutcasting that?
A voice you might recognize.
Them? Yeah. Really? Are we lucky enough to know said people?
Yeah, you might tune. You have to tune in and see. If you recognize the voice, you might be able to put a face to the voice. But tune in on the Warhammer TV Twitch channel and see. We're going to cover as many games as possible over the course of the weekend. And, I'm going to try to build in some of that culture from the area too. We'll see how it works.
So everybody's going to be drinking coffee?
Coffee and talking about the sea. And I have to learn what happens up there.
Excellent.
Speaking of the general area, though, was it Mount Rainier is within. Well, I think you can see it from anywhere, no matter where you are up there, but you can definitely see it from the event hall. It's spectacular.
As somebody who grew up on the west coast of Canada, that whole seaboard is absolutely stunning, and I really think that sort of area, even if you don't go for events, but you just go, you can just enjoy the views no matter where you are. And you drive 15 minutes in any direction and you'll be in a different type of environment. It's so cool.
I do have to say, growing up in Australia, where it is generally a pretty arid landscape, and growing up watching, consuming American media and television and movies, etc. The first place I came to in the United States, I flew into Hawaii and then flew from Hawaii straight to Seattle. And I got out of the Seattle airport on New Year's Eve at 11 p.m. So it was just as the fireworks were starting to go off. And then when the sun came up the next day, I was like, why didn't no one tell me this place was so pretty? The United States was genuinely a freaking gorgeous landscape. You think you see all the metropolitan, all the big cities and Hollywood and Vegas and New York and all these Boston, Chicago, all these big hubs. But then you just an hour, 2 hours in any direction out of any major cities, usually something pretty gorgeous, which I think goes by the wayside a lot. And it sounds exactly what you guys are mentioning, because that, yeah, like you said, Tanya, that entire side. That entire see, I don't know, but they call it the Pacific South Turbine, whatever the crap. The top right bit, it's all pretty, it's all gorgeous.
I couldn't agree more.
Pacific South Turbine?
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Okay,
okay,
yeah.
It's just
that sounds
made
up.
Really?
It's northwest for us. It might be southeast for you. And by the way, that was January 2nd in your time. I don't know. So New Year's Eve.
Well, what was wild was I took off on New Year's Eve, I flew for like 30 hours and landed on New Year's Eve. It's bizarre.
It's magic.
Like you said, a callback to the start of the show, time zones. We don't know how they work.
Directly after this event, there's going to be the ATC happening. I'll be playing at the ATC.
Oh, snap, me too.
Yeah. Man, I'm not sure what to take. I know we talked about a little bit about what I was thinking about taking, and it's going to be probably Astra Militarum or Knights, but Knights, not as strong as they were a couple weeks ago.
Still pretty strong, I will say, but yeah. The edge has been taken off.
The edge, quote unquote, says the competitive player.
In the ATC format, you do get
True.
You
get to take advantage of those skews.
Yeah, the table matchups, and then a little bit of hand in the pairings. But you just have less on the table, and this is something that would be a cool debate for us to have is, when is it a good time to pick static objectives and not go tactical? And I don't know if we're going to solve that, but let's, we have to talk about it a little bit during the course of the conversation. And if you're just joining us,
definitely got some opinions.
Yeah, if you're just joining us, this is Warhammer 40,000 show, mostly, where we talk about, like basically playing the game how you want to play the game. Look, it's a brand new season. I felt like we got to recap some of this stuff. But some of the things we do talk about are about how to maybe be more efficient with your list. So it's not necessarily about winning games necessarily, but if you want to have an outcome-driven experience and be in efficiency is one of those things you're concerned about, that is one of the things that we talk about. And sometimes we talk about just how to play the models that you want to play with, and that may put people in a situation of having to choose to maybe play static missions as opposed to what maybe the direction of the tactical missions and flipping cards that is an option for players now.
Yeah, absolutely is. And I'm seeing it's something that's really hotly debated. I think, and this is of course the competitive, filthy, top-end meta-chasing consensus, is that generally speaking, unless you're playing a hard skew, unless you are somebody who's playing into Knights, into something of a similar ilk, or somebody who has a phenomenal amount of small characters that they have to use, generally it's more rewarding to build an army that plays to just rip the cards off the top of the deck, Yu-Gi-Oh style. Mm-hmm. But it's a very real consideration for a lot of builds out there that you want to build your army, that it can't just have a simple fallback in the tougher situations. Like you go up against your worst matchup. Is it better to just have a pretty, well, if I can just pick these two fixed and get a nice even 65, 70 points out of this game, rather than, possibly losing trying to reach for a bunch of cards I won't get while I'm getting, possibly dominated on the table? And these are very real things, and we have to reevaluate where the lines are, where the decision points are with these new mission packs as well. It's a really cool stage of the game.
So I don't know how to build, the list that I want to build yet for this format, for the ATC format. And we're talking about, this is not a singles, this is a team event. This is American Team Championship, and you are playing for a communal score with your team, and you're playing to basically try to get a certain threshold of points above your opponent's team. And if you do that by a wide enough margin, you get the win and move on to the next round. And if you get like 4 wins out of it, no matter what the margin is, then you are considered to have won the game as well. So you're thinking with Knights, with a bunch of maybe just high-powered heavy hitters, not a lot of things to run around and control objectives, can you even play with a bunch of the big toys and play for a more, you pick your static objectives and get enough points to where you're still doing right by your team? That's the debate that I'm having internally right now.
One thing I need to do, because naturally I'm not going to be there and have no skin in this game, but should your team, your two teams, lads, should Paul's team, I don't, what do you guys, what's the name of your team, Paul?
The Wrong Way Kids.
That's it. And Red, are you US Army Esports?
Nope. I'm playing casually with some friends. I am going to be in jersey with my US Army Esports jersey, and there will be several other players. We don't have an official team for the U.S. Army, but we do have several players that are participating. My team, going with some good friends of mine, to include my brother, which I'm fortunate to still call him a friend.
All right.
I know, haha.
He's also a good dude.
Yeah, he's all right. We'll be. I'm trying to remember the name of our team. If that doesn't tell you how casual we are, it's something along the lines of. I'm pretty sure it's bird charging stations, which is what we also the inside joke that we refer to as cactuses or cacti.
Because we all know birds are fake, right?
Red and I played on the same team once. Red was kind enough to join the team.
It was awesome.
Had a wonderful time. And look, that's the thing. It's like there are teams, of course, that are people that are always locked into this club or that club or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's really it's a huge community. Like there are going to be 500 players there. That most of them know each other and have played on at least each other's team once or twice.
So throwing out an absolute high stakes thing here, should your two teams play, do we have a guarantee that you guys will pair each other?
We can
Just
try.
be like,
Yeah, I can tell you right now that my team is not going to care absolutely one way. We haven't even talked about yet exactly, what armies we've kind of said like, hey, I've got this army, but we haven't committed in any direction. Like we're not playing with any. I think someone asked us what our strategy was, and at least 4 of us out of 5 laughed. So.
Well, I want pictures. I want a full page spread in the newspaper of which one of you's got the rock paper scissors and had to put up first, and then look the other dead in the eye and puts themselves up, and then you do the whole Bruce Lee, bring it on, let's do it.
That should be good. I've got Angron, so I think that's an auto win, right? What did they say?
It's a moral victory. I bought my index cards. I got the Night Households and the Astra Militarum just ready to go just in case any eventuality. And not that I wouldn't play, of course got other armies at the disposal, but it seems like with the rest of the composition of the team and someone already using the Space Marines that these are probably the best options for me at this moment. And I do love the fact the index card exists, especially in these early days of this edition, but we'll see how it pans out. Still don't have a list yet. The list I'm thinking about with Knights at the moment is basically all. So with the points changes that we were talking about, was it say, I say quote unquote not as powerful as they were before. There was almost like a day one change in points for things that fired indirectly and that things that benefited from the towering rule. And these are very powerful abilities.
Extremely, extremely powerful. No one who's been playing the game in any way since 8th or 9th edition needs to be told that indirect has reared its head up and down throughout different phases of the game, either being a problem or being pretty well balanced. But it seems to be one of those ones that's either too good or not good enough. But there has been.
Sorry to jump in, but there's a lot of folks out there clamoring for, taking it back to the way it was. Like Knights should be able to be seen by everyone, but not see everyone. I don't feel that way.
So I had a weird epiphany. See, I can't remember if we discussed this on the previous show. So it was a feel-bad moment. The towering mechanic has been something because GW has gone out of their way at every level to remove anything that was a feel-bad mechanic or interaction for players. A lot of the wrapping, trapping, tri-pointing, wrapping of, or, stopping disembarks from transport when a transport is destroyed to kill the unit inside. A lot of these things have been removed. And towering was added to be one of the things that would stop Knight players from having issues, especially when we started adapting terrain to 9th edition. We started adding enough terrain to our tables to make 9th edition a playable, enjoyable experience.
With the different heights meaning something.
Exactly.
And then, that's the kind of stuff. There's a kind of a different way you interact with the terrain right now.
Yeah, and so we had to add, take the windows off the bottom floors of ruins, so to speak, and have them up higher and stuff. And it used to be, if you're just joining us in 10th edition, that if you could see, if a ruin had the obscuring keyword, which has been removed from 10th edition, it meant that unless you were in the ruin, you could not be seen through it. Except if you were a Titanic model. If you were a Titanic model, you could be seen regardless. It was true line of sight for you, but not for you to your opponent. Now towering means you can be seen and see true line of sight all the time, doesn't matter. I contest a little bit with this, but this only comes with the hindsight of a full 9th edition's worth of data. Both Imperial Knights and Renegade Knights or Chaos Knights have been the same as Indirect Fire, have been extremely hard to balance. They've either been too good, not good enough. 9th edition, I have to say, is the best that GW has ever done with the Titanic S, the big stompy, nothing but robots armies. They were the most balanced they've ever been. Their win rates reflect that with a whole 3 years of data. Their win rate reflects that these were the best 2 codexes for the rest of the player base to play into and for those players to get close to that between that 55-45 percentile win rate that we're aiming for. And I am 100% talking about the competitive scene right now. So please, if this doesn't reflect,
you're talking about win rates, actual performance,
exactly
from logged games inside of something like BCP, where we can actually look at percentages and stats and that kind of stuff. Not purely anecdotal information.
Exactly that. And so while I know 10th edition would have to have been like in production 2 years before it was released, so therefore GW would not have had the data, I contest right now that even though Knight players had to deal with that field badge mechanic, and they absolutely did, they navigated that very well by statistical reports. That was not a field badge mechanic that held that army down to such an extent that they couldn't function on a competitive level. They navigated that, and they did extremely well despite that. And so I say, maybe we do go back to the way it was. What was wrong with that? If the win rates from 3 years of data show that they were able to compete at a relatively balanced level, and people still played them and wanted to play them.
Now, my counterpoint here is that you're talking about one mechanic, and there are many mechanics that have changed in the game.
That is extremely accurate.
But yeah, and I'm not saying it all. And by the way, I'm also not advocating saying the towering is perfect. I do think that if one can be seen, one should be able to see you in the idea that this thing is this behemoth that extends above the buildings and walks through streets, kind of things. But I don't know what the answer is. I'm just more happy with seen and be seen than I am seen and no seen. Objectively, without coming from the perspective, I do happen to have an Imperial Knight and a Chaos Knight army, but that's almost beside my point. I hate that it kind of maybe takes away from my point. I just feel better with the Knight peeking over the building and you seeing it, but the Knight also seeing you.
No, I totally agree. I don't have I have some stuff that I'm building. I do like Knights, but I don't have an army in either one, and so I'm with you, Paul. I understand what you're saying in regards that it takes away from it because there's the looming suspicion, I guess, of a bad faith argument, right? Because
I'm owning it from the beginning, but I feel strongly either way.
Right, but I just don't think that that's really a major issue here. I think the towering mechanic by itself is a good mechanic, and I actually think that they took it to the next level. I was just waiting for the right moment, but I was being weirdly considerate of Adam and allowing him to elaborate, and not just jumping in with the... because I really wanted to just finish it off with that's just your opinion, man. But,
hey, any quotes of the dude is fine.
Yeah, so I think towering's great. I think that the aspect of it's this massive thing, and I think the mechanic, again, as I said before, is good. Being able to see things that can see and be seen, and the points increase is I think an appropriate lever for how you expand it. Is there some other interactions that maybe need to be guarded against or rails be put on in regards to those mechanics? Sure, there's certain things maybe shouldn't be combined. Towering, devastating wounds, anti-something or anything, that those combinations maybe shouldn't be combined all the way to such a full extent. There's only one model I know of that really carries that. I don't think Knights are the major concern with that. I think that there's other synergy aspects with Imperial Knights specifically that you have to be aware of. And that just goes back into the development of the edition and the game and being patient and understanding that we want this perfect product out the gate. And I just don't think that that's realistic with the wide range of what we're able to play with. We look at what we have at our fingertips and the potential that we have. And I'm not saying that you just need to roll over and let it go. I think that the initial release that GW has done as far as dropping, hey, look, we acknowledge that this needs to be fixed, and this needs to be fixed, and this needs to be fixed. I think they've been working on 10th edition for a hot minute, and I think that there's still more work to be done. When you look at war game design and war game development, and this is just coming from my schooling and education, there are people that it takes a matter of, when I say years, I don't just mean 2 years or 1 year or 3 years. I mean, a lot of folks go into war game development and actually producing something that is playable and out to the table, and they don't get a chance to keep going back like GW does and being able to address it. It takes them, I would say, roughly 5 to 7 years to get a good working product. And so I think that I appreciate the engagement by the rules team and the competitive element of GW to try and bring these things about. Do I think that there are things that can continue to be addressed? Absolutely. But I don't think towering is necessarily one of them. I think there's other things that make things with towering more problematic. And that's what probably needs to be addressed more so than just towering itself. I think the towering mechanic is fine. There's just other aspects that play into that.
Like, what if infantry were just harder to see?
Yeah, that's fair. Or
I don't want to speculate because I don't want a solution. I feel like the like part of the thrill of a game like this is it is kind of always a living, breathing thing, much like the meta we talk about. But it's changing and evolving, and there's a mechanism in place to nudge it when things get out of hand or whatever, and that very much is in line with basically every single competitive thing on the planet right now. Heck, the rules for Major League Baseball just changed this year.
What? Right? Yeah, absolutely. It's a great point.
So, I mean, like it's something that but again, I'm not saying that there's like imperfections built into the design or whatever, but I'm saying that as the game evolves and people interact with it, and we want to make it as fun as we want to make it or whatever, it's kind of cool. There's a mechanism in place to do it, but I can see how there's a lot that has changed in this edition, but it's still very familiar because we're moving models around, and I like that part.
Yeah.
But there's still some stuff we got to get used to.
Well, and I really caution folks against going back, right? Taking a step backwards, saying, well, it if it was in 9th edition and everybody liked it, and yes, I'm talking to you, Adam, then we should just go right back to that. I'm strongly for continuing to develop progress and appreciating the differences we have. As a World Eaters player and what I'm going forward with, I can't keep talking about 9th edition. I can't keep talking about Blood Tithe.
Yep.
I need to focus on Blessings of Khorne. I need to focus on what I've got and the models I have. I can wish that Angron still had the aura that prevented people from falling back all I want, but I don't have it. I just need to roll with what I've got and accept it for what it is and play it out.
Quit living in the past, man. Yeah,
that's right.
Stuff. No, and I agree. I was just trying to push back more and point out that from a statistical point of view, there is some argument for what we had before, whether that's what we want in the future. Brand new argument. And also the core rules
are lies, Adam.
The core rules have changed. Though that fix worked for the 9th edition core rules, there's no way you could just say that's going to automatically work for the 10th edition, where there's no obscuring keywords on terrain. So many things have changed. Hands up, and you can please do this at home. You look to your left, look to your right.
You could be driving, so be careful.
Yeah. If in that case, do it with your left foot, especially if you're driving an automatic. If you're driving stick, don't do it at all. Put your hand up if you've been bad touched by Overwatch yet.
Oh, yeah.
I felt it, but I mean, bad touch. I kind of like it.
I played against Thousand Suns last week. I've been bad touched by many things, but especially Overwatch.
Ooh. You want to talk about a core mechanic that's not a core mechanic? Like Overwatch management is now just a bread and butter thing that everyone has to think about in every turn of the game. Like it's cool.
You played. I was going to say, you played 30k, right? And so
yes, yep.
I just feel like it's one of those adjustments. I think for some of us that have played 30k, the reaction system, that's very much where this Overwatch, I think, pulls itself from, and I feel it very much. And I guess having played 30k, I'm not too surprised by it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a gut check, and it's also a courage check. It's also it's so good. I really like how it changes.
It's so permissive. It's like you either when you start or finish the move in this phase or that phase, just knock yourself out, Overwatch away, have fun with it.
Oh man, Orcs players, make sure you're bringing Commandos.
Do they get around that?
Yeah, break that down for us.
Oh, they can't be Overwatched.
Oh, that's pretty.
What?
Well, yeah, that's good.
Secret unlocked.
Well, look, Commandos it's been pretty consistent. If you've been playing Orcs for a while, you probably got some Commandos. That's a nice tip. Talking about the changes and stuff, there are plenty of games happening, but I don't know if anyone's cracked the codes on the list. And that's kind of one of the reasons I'm excited about seeing some of these larger events, because, I'm not saying necessarily who wins will have had the best list during that period of time, but I want to look at the field and what are people taking for the factions that we know they like. And maybe that chasing that meta is something we can talk about in just a second. Let's take a quick break, and we'll come back with the second half of the show.
FTN is brought to you by Discount Games Inc. Please visit them at www.discountgamesinc.com. And don't forget to ask Jay about ways to save even more on your hobby projects.
Hey everybody, we are back. I want to give a special thanks to, of course, our sponsors for the show, but also our Patreon subscribers, without whom, I think that's the right tense, or without whom the show would not be possible, because that's where we get to continue to innovate on the backside and can start making this out, which makes us feel more confident about starting season 2, which will be a series of 10 episodes. The seasons may have a theme. I think this theme is just getting to know the brand new Warhammer 40,000.
Yeah, get good. Scrubs, 10th edition. Here it is.
Yeah.
L2 play. Adam?
Yeah, I know. It's rough.
It seems, I will say, speaking of list, and, we're talking about the what's going to rise to the top, we do that right after finish thanking everybody. It is, we do have a Patreon page. We got some t-shirts, we got some stuff. There are plenty of ways to support the show. And either of those ways are not great for you. Please don't forget to leave us those 5-star reviews. That is the completely free way. And of course, all the shows will be completely free. And I keep meaning for us to sit down and record this Astra Militarum walkthrough. But I'm talking about this being a contender for a list I may take. It feels a little weird to get everything you want in the list. Like it almost, maybe it is because I'm in the new edition, like with a kid in a candy store or whatever. But, once you start taking, again, what I really want to take, the points start to get a little thin.
Yeah, it's obvious there's a lot that has gone up, gone down, swirled about. That vortex I was talking about in the Pacific, Southwest, a lot of points in that vortex. But no, it's really the internal balances in codexes has completely changed from what we were used to. Like vehicles are generally up, a lot of infantry somewhat stayed the same, characters going up, characters going down. It's a whole new world. And so when you look at your shelf and you're like, well, what was good for me last edition? It's very few armies that can really pick up what they took 6 months ago and just think it's the same battle plan. Custodians and Gene Steel Cult essentially is the only two that I could pick off the top of my head. They could pick up anything similar to what they were playing 6 months ago and think it's still going to translate. Orcs could be another one, Tanya. Mm-hmm. I haven't quite got my finger on the Orc pulse at the moment, but what's moving and shaking there apart from the Commandos?
I've been actually considering this because I locked in orcs as my faction for my next event that I'm going to. So I've kind of been looking around in a few places and asking around to people that I know play competitively, and literally everybody has a different list.
That's good, right?
I actually think that it means that the index is pretty healthy for orcs because there's a few different list archetypes that seem to be doing okay. Or at least that people are happy to play with. But some things that I've seen people take, the Big Mech and Mega Armor seems to be pretty much an auto take for most people because he just straight up brings back a Mega Knob in your command phase.
Seems good.
Seems really good. I've also seen people having quite good success. I've seen
so
Grot
even though
tanks,
they have a Pain Boy who you think would heal the orcs. No, this Big Mac just puts one back together.
Because he believes. It believes it's going to work.
Yeah, it's orcs. It doesn't need to make sense.
I'm just checking. I'm waiting.
Yeah. So I've also seen people considering grot tanks seriously, like just hordes of grot tanks with rockets. Just lots of beast nega boys and trucks now. Gaz is getting a lot of play. So there's a lot of different archetypes. The only things that we're really not seeing are flyers. That's basically it. I've seen Stompas. My list has 2 knots. I don't have 2 Gorkanauts, but I'm bringing a Morkanaut and a Gorkanaut. And Commandos, Storm Boys to do secondaries. It's kind of people are just playing around and kind of having success with a lot of different types of units. And it's really actually quite refreshing to see.
In the theme with getting to know this edition, the rule is fix that armor up for the Big Mech and Mega Armor. While this model is leading a unit in your command phase, you can return one destroyed bodyguard model to that unit. A unit that an attached character leads becomes their bodyguard. So anytime you see that, that's whatever unit they are leading. And this particular model can only lead Mechanobs.
That's right. Another thing in Orcs that I've seen, so this is actually probably the unit that I've seen the most, but it is the Beast Boss on Squigosaur with Headwop as Kill Choppa, because then the Beast Boss himself will do devastating wounds, and then also the Squigosaur will do devastating wounds. So he's kind of like this fast-moving, tough distraction Carnifex that just does devastating wounds everywhere.
Seems good.
Yeah. That's pretty good. And the Beast Boss is something that a lot of the Orc players have on their shelves.
That's right, because the model is awesome.
That is true too. But he was quite popular in the previous edition, so I like it when those can kind of do the easy transitions.
Yeah, and he can't really join a unit, so it's just...
He is a unit. Just one Orc unit.
He is a complete unit. But he's also really tough. He's like toughness 10. So, and he's got a 4-up feel no pain. So he's pretty tough. He can take a lot. And, if you're needing a way to maybe bait out Overwatch, that's maybe a way to do it.
I like that. Or just flood everyone with Commandos. No.
Yeah, so Commandos, as far as I know, you can't take them in 5s anymore. You have to take them in 10s, which is kind of...
War Gear's different too, if I remember right. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Like they basically take what is in the box, which is what a lot of units have. Unless you're Sanguinary Guard, and you can take 10 Melta-Guns.
Yeah.
Say what?
They can still take the Bomb Squig, though, which is really nice. If you've got something that has like 1 or 2 wounds left on it within 12 inches of them, it could be really useful to just get rid of stuff.
I'm digging that. For the Astra Militarum, I'm actually thinking about going all mech. I mean, like as far as like tanks, all tanks, like even Chimeras and Tauroxes and stuff.
I think it's really important for the guard to be mobile.
Well, does that also apply to like Orcs and stuff? Orcs have a lot of mounted vehicle options and stuff. Like are the battle wagons back on the menu kind of thing?
So yes, I've seen a few battle wagons. I've seen a lot of trucks, and so you can put Commandos in a truck with the named character, and then they get the scout rule as well. So some people have been using that to like move on to objectives right away, and there's some utility there.
All right, this is trying to figure everything out, and it seems to favor a shooty type build for the game right now. So I want to turn my attention to red for a moment.
I feel like physics kind of favors a shooty game. There's a whole reason why, as we move beyond certain things, we've realized that like guns are cool and they actually can reach out and touch someone and do what you need them to. And so I just want to put that out there, that like there's something to this whole gun thing. I know, like, don't get me wrong, I'm just talked about World Eaters and we talked about Orcs getting in the fight and everything. And I know that's why you were transitioning to me, because I'm definitely going to bring a bunch of melee weapons to a gunfight. But it is absolutely 100% a gunfight. Like, you can't escape that. I love melee, and I'm going to keep doing it because it's awesome, and I have a great time, whether win or lose. If I can, it's a challenge for me, trying to get through terrain and get onto the fight, and then make sure it's a meaningful fight and how I can actually pull it off and whatnot.
It's very satisfying when you do, though. So I mean, I'm right there with you. With as long as you've got a little bit of luck and maybe just a little bit of stratagem or enhancement support.
Yeah, we call that friction, Paul, and that's a real thing. And I appreciate the fact that it's not just a mathematical formula that if I just show up and I have these things, there's no way that I can efficiently lose it because I'm just going to have this. No, I actually have to like make a risk assessment. I have to deliberate over the fact of, oh yeah, you're going to get a vote. You get to do Overwatch. But with my World Eaters, if you kill one of my things, I suddenly unlock a couple bonuses here or there or whatever. And so I'm okay. Like I can take a little bit here or there. I can do that. Can I play the game well enough where I can deliver a force that can actually execute appropriate melee? Even understanding that it has changed from 9th to 10th, and I can't pile in and consolidate like I used to, and I can't, I just can't attack. I can't just charge to charge. I have to make sure that I have things, and there are things that the World Eaters are not just by themselves all, charging and melee. They have objectives, stratagem that allows them to have sticky objectives. They have stratagems that allow them to hang into the fight and reduce damage by 1. Those kinds of things that you can suddenly surprise people and stay in that melee fight much more than I think a lot of people are anticipating, due to the prevalence and appropriate prevalence of shooting in this game right now.
I saw a meme this week where it was essentially an ancient humanoid, like just holding a rock, and it read, "Human discovers rock, look like it's over for you, apex predators." Because essentially, as soon as humans figured out how to throw a rock, we owned this space, and the space being the world. Like, not too dissimilar to the analogies Red is making. Like, you throw rock, you better than person who has to hit with stick, essentially. Yeah. Unless you're playing baseball, in which case, go for it, get your runs in.
Yeah.
Just looking at this critically and standing back for a bit. I mean, in the idea that this is a game and that, every faction theoretically should have a chance to be balanced against every other faction. Do you feel like it's a shortcoming of just the limitations on the way the charge phase and the consolidate used to work as opposed to the way it works now, or is it just something that we haven't gotten comfortable with yet?
I think we have not gotten comfortable with it personally.
I think it's going to be a fundamental rethink of why you charge, why you want to get into combat. It used to be there was no downsides to being in combat with your opponent, as long as they weren't going to kill you, as long as you were fighting on their side of the table. Charge at nauseum, tap everything, wrap everything, get on every objective, just charge, no downsides. The fight phase and the charge phase and the pilot and all those phases have been hit, I'd say, on a pretty holistic scale, in that a lot of and like I said at the start of the episode, a lot of feel bad mechanics that could be executed during that phase have been removed or neutered. The biggest one being, of course, I'm going to charge, and one guy out of this 20 unit of Necron warriors is going to get within engagement range, and the other guys are going at a right angle
to wall off your entire
army.
Yeah.
At a right angle to block off your entire army and take 2 objectives. And that is just so far from what I envision and what many people envision.
It's not
from,
thematic.
Previous editions of the game. But I also do want to acknowledge that whilst a lot of toughness values have gone up, especially on vehicles and monsters, and a lot of offensive output on guns has gone up to some extent, although be that via devastating wounds or other keywords, just very few, and I can't think of a single one off the top of my head, very few melee profiles got better from their 9th edition counterparts. They all either stayed the same or lost rend, which means they stayed static in a game where
you're talking about wolf
things
and hammers.
I didn't want to make people sad, Paul, but now we're here. Vanguard veterans suck.
I don't know. I've actually had fun using Vanguard veterans. It's because it's a lot of attacks, and you can make them look however you want.
They just fit for a new purpose, and that's what they just got a different coat of paint. Might be better, might be worse than what you were experienced with them previously. And like we've said already, got to leave the 9th edition thinking at the door and just try and find a reason or a purpose for them now.
And also, I know I made a snarky comment or whatever, but we cannot undersell the moment. Like, it's
okay. I thought you were going to say we can't undersell just how bad those Thunder have done. Never mind. But like I said, melee profiles stayed the same or got worse, whereas toughness values went up. And so for clearing objectives and for taking and playing the actual mission, melee is still very relevant. It's not going to be the thing that carries you unless you have a very specific army build, or an army that does it in a very specific way. World Eaters, Custodians being 2 that I can think of. Orcs, absolutely, that leverage it to such an extent that they can, it's their modus operandi. It's the reason to build an army. Most armies are like... So it used to be that the best units in the game in 8th edition especially were multimodal units, the things that could shoot and fight.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 9th edition, those split off a little bit. Now I think they're split off even more. And the balance internally in your own 2,000 point game or 1,000 point, whatever you play, is going to be completely different from 9th edition to 10th edition. It used to be you'd want maybe a 60-40, maybe even an 80-20 melee to shooting army balance. And now I think that's inverted. You want enough melee to threaten to push and pressure people, but not lose the game if you don't.
So you want to be up there in the center, and I think you're talking about maybe either being the aggressor or being the brick, like the brick or the blade.
Yes,
pick a lane.
That's a good way of doing it. Yep. So like in Dark Angel's list for me, all the melee that I need in my army, 1 unit of Black Knights and the Lion. That's all the melee I'm willing to invest specific points into bringing. Everything else probably just Dakar. And that's what's working for me in Marines at the moment. And I will say Marines are lacking a little bit in the melee front, if you're not, Space Wolves, Blood Angels, etc. But and that's going to be very different.
Drop pod, you can do that now.
You can, you absolutely can. It's a lot of fun. It's pretty wild. But Red, how much shooting are you even able to take in World Eaters? Is that even an option for you, or you just get
does a combi bolter on a Rhino count?
I was gonna say everybody's got pistols, man. I don't know what you're talking about. We've all got guns.
Man, you and I both know they ran out of ammo for those pistols like generations ago.
Clogged
and
with blood.
All they are now is a club. They're just another club.
I mean, thank God for green energy and plasma pistols, right? So I imagine those are still holding out.
Renewable resources in the warp. One of my mates used to say that berserkers didn't actually shoot because you usually only use the pistols once. It was them throwing the empty pistol at you before they made combat. And that was the one bolt pistol attack they did before they made combat. This was like 6th, 7th edition.
I do have a buddy who did the same thing. He would never fire his pistols. He's like, that's just not what they do. They're not about that.
I like that.
I like it. Yeah. And this is, it's my theme working its way in and stuff. And I do like the fact that the combat is, well, okay, let's talk about that for a second. I was going to say that the combat is more cinematic, like, Braveheart, where everyone's piling into each other and just shooting each other up. But that is a style and theme thing that doesn't necessarily have to happen in a game where there are mechanics around, this other level, controlling objectives, completing tasks, and that kind of stuff. Do we have a better ratio, in y'all's opinion, with this particular edition than maybe what we've had in the past? Of theme to mechanic, or again, something we haven't gotten used to yet.
I think it's a little. So I think the theme elements are a little lacking at the moment. I mean, there's only so much you're going to be able to do with indexes and GW having to write. What was it? We're like 20.
The actual concept of when you charge into a unit, you charge into the unit, and when you pile in to theoretically get more attacks and get stuck into the combat, that you pile in and get stuck into the combat, as opposed to you are using this mechanic to achieve objectives on the table because you're looking at the scoreboard.
I do agree with that. I agree. Like in when my brain goes to the 41st millennium, as close as I can get, like everyone wants to, the whole meme of drive me closer, I want to hit them with my sword, is always, lurking in the back of your head as a bit of a joke. But there are we even know, Red can probably speak to it if he wants to, for Modern Warfare, there are reasons to go and punch the other guy.
Well, I'm going to throw it back to one of your comments, is like we have to rethink why we charge, which may rethink the elements we put into our list that are capable of doing that.
The biggest reason you want to charge now is to take an objective. An objective you can't see, or that you cannot remove.
I'll say clog up the OC,
Exactly that. You want to do it to either hamper their score or get you points. You're not doing it just for the sake of doing it, which is how I felt a lot of it was done in the previous edition.
Has that played out? I mean, as Tanya and Red, you're all playing some of the, I guess, elements with a more melee capability than some of the things we've been talking about playing. Is that playing out for y'all?
I am not entirely sure. So I have had 2 games with Custodes, 2 games with Orcs, and 1 game with Dark Angels. Don't ask. And so I don't think that I have enough data to really comment on that. Maybe get back to me next week. I'll have more games under my belt with Orcs, and then I'll be able to be more knowledgeable.
I think that's a good way of thinking about it. Like the why to charge, how to build in the list, how many points do you put in your list that are capable of doing that? I mean, what I've thought, if you're going to be playing an assault-based army at all, you want to have as many points as possible and they have assault capabilities. But now, you might be the charging might be more like a scalpel than the hammer than it used to be right now.
Well, and they reduce some of the finesse in regards to the movement piece, because you can't charge this way or that way. You know, piling and consolidation, the extra movement phase, as I used to call it, is now gone. And so, yes, there is something to it and its purpose and what you're trying to do. When you can pile in, right, you can pile in to get an objective. You can, you can't consolidate. That's what I meant, is you can't consolidate unless you're going into the enemy or you're going onto an objective. And so there is something to that, and being able to manage objectives better.
And the objective is like only if there's
you.
not an enemy around. You still have to, like, there's this
Correct.
order of operations you have to look at.
Correct. And so it's I think it definitely is repurposed from what it was before. It has more of an objective focus built into it, which I don't mind, and it's something you have to pay attention to.
If you are playing against someone that is playing an assault-based army, you still got to get comfortable with those types of rules, because there have been times so far, especially this early on, where I've had to remind an opponent, like, well, you can't make that move that you're trying to make. That was the move you could have made 3 weeks ago. This is the way the moves work now.
Mm-hmm.
So keep that in mind. And objective control. That's probably a good thing to close the show out on, is that, you know, all models have the OC stat
Until they're battle shocked.
Everybody has a plan until they get battle shocked in the face. You just simply you add up all the models with their OC stat and compare it to your opponents. And you're exactly right. There's ways to influence that. But now we're not in a world where we've got some units that get, well, I shouldn't say that, but it's fairly straightforward about how you calculate that right now.
It's so much of an more elegant system, and much more easy for GW to balance as well. Like, just be like, well, this one is really good, but it's good because it's got huge damage output. Not sure it should be OC2. Let's knock it down to OC1, and then the purpose for that unit can fundamentally change. You know, things of that ilk. It's another great lever for GW to be able to pull in the future if they need to. It
adds that theme in. Like, so, you know, if this unit does not have a chaplain leading it, then it cannot control objectives, basically.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
Yep. Or like right now, there's a lot of things that will increase the OC of a unit that it joins. Like, you know, planting a banner on an objective because you have a banner bearer in the unit, whatever that may be for your faction, means that the lads are more inspired and hold the objective more better. You know, it sounds good to me.
That sounds great, Adam.
I speak good. What can I say?
We need a banner for us talking. Hey, look, we've been on a break for a while. We're getting back into it.
Yeah.
Oh, but it's one of the things, you know, like, again, how you control objectives is not quite the same. By the way, we didn't solve the standard, the tactical versus static objectives for secondary.
Oh yeah.
Yet.
No, I've not gotten as much practice as I would like with the competitive sets. You know, they released, here are the competitive event. Here's the matchups of this and that to go together, primary, secondaries, and what they recommend. I haven't got a chance to do those, but I have got a chance to test play what came out of the Leviathan box, and I have enjoyed it. I've appreciated it. I like the card mix. I like the structure that they have. I actually don't think that I can see where, you know, there's this desire for standardization in a competitive environment where you want it to be more streamlined and you're not sitting there having to develop it. But I do like the card development process that they've got built in. And then the secondaries between fixed or tactical, right? Fixed being you choose some and you keep those, versus tactical where you're rotating through, and as you accomplish an objective it moves on and you get to go to the next one, that kind of deal. I would say that my opinion on those is not so much about my army. That definitely plays into it. It's very much more so about my opponent. The battlefield is set to a certain degree, but what can my opponent do that could have so much of a vote? And if it's fixed or tactical, that if I'm going with the variation of tactical, is the opponent going to have too much influence to prevent me from scoring, versus fixed where I know I can just keep going back to the same thing, maybe with not as much payoff as tactical.
I'm on the other side of it here. I'm thinking about, at what point does my list become so skewed that I feel like I cannot compete in random objectives? And I don't mean random, you know, the tactical side of it. I mean, like, without what might be a very laid out, meticulous battle plan.
Sure.
And I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. That is the question that I will hopefully be thinking about over the next couple of weeks. And maybe that's one of the things we can have more information on our next episode as well. Hey, we did it. We just did an episode.
Yay.
Round one.
We're a little out of practice.
So this weekend, and when you're hearing this, either I may get out a little bit early, and if I do, I'll put that on the Patreon first. But then it'll go. But I mean, in a day or so early or whatever. But it may just be in the wide release, depending on when I can actually edit it, because I'll be traveling to Tacoma to host the live stream we were talking about. But that's when we're going to get to see some generals out there competing in what is to date the largest event for the new edition. And I'm curious to see how they've chosen to attack that. And I'd actually also be curious to see what percentage of people end up picking the static objectives over the course of the weekend, if anybody ever does.
Yeah, I would love if that becomes a box we can tick when we, are inputting our data in whatever competitive, tracker you're using, Labs or BCP or whatever it may be.
And then how many gambits get done as well. Like that's how many gambits are done and then win a game.
Because you just want, you should get a prize for winning a game with a gambit. You should just straight up just get a prize or automatically, and then every time you win more, you should almost be like in a season, whoever wins the most games via a gambit should just, I don't know,
take the crown.
It's just so cool. Absolutely.
Well, we'll see how it plays out. Well, listen, thanks everybody for joining us. I really appreciate you sticking with us through our vacation. We're going to get back into a more normal schedule, probably, episode every other week or so. It could be more, again, we're going to have some of our deep dive episodes as well sort of creep up. It's been a pleasure coming and hanging out with y'all again, all together. And thank y'all for listening. Leave us those 5-star reviews, thumbs up, all that other kind of stuff, wherever you happen to be listening to this at the moment. We'll see y'all soon.
See you soon.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.
Spec scan is clear. I think they're gone. For now.